Right now, Pittsburgh's best sports show is about to begin. Call us or tweet us. We've got things to talk about on the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call, powered by FanDuel Sportsbook.
Another Steelers veteran on defense whose contract status is in question. Steelers play in the preseason again tomorrow. And the Pirates get Maddoxed? We'll talk about all of it and more here on the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call, powered by FanDuel Sportsbook. Hello again, everybody. I'm Josh Taylor, joined live in the 93.7 The Fan newsroom by Chris Mueller. Weekdays 2 to 6, one half of the PM team, 93.7 The Fan. Chris here as always. Chris, I'm kind of disappointed. I was expecting a much more, colorful T-shirt. I'm kind of surprised, but good to have you here all the same.
Well, when I've got this lovely jacket from my good buddy Jim Loke, I try to wear a neutral shirt, just kind of a plain shirt, to make sure that the jacket is what's on display here. So that's why you're getting kind of a boring routine from me today. But I do apologize.
Boring routine with an epic name drop. I'll leave it at that. Let's keep it moving. Steelers and Eagles tomorrow in Philly at Lincoln Financial Field. Before we get to that, I want to talk about the bigger story that's dominated the news cycle the past 24 hours or so. Joe Hayden wants a contract extension. He wants to stay as a Steeler. I talked to Andrew Filipponi about this during KDKA News at 4. He pretty much thought of a long-term deal with Hayden, an extension would take him into his age 35, age 36 season, which by most standards is old for a cornerback. You hate to use that term, but that's pretty much how it's described. But your thoughts on the Steelers using more of that cap space, which they'll have plenty of next season, to maybe keep Joe Hayden around?
Well, they're less than stellar track record of late at drafting and developing cornerbacks might have motivated Joe Hayden's representation to say, hey, why don't you want to keep my client around for even a couple more years? He's still been pretty good, Josh, but he hasn't been great. He hasn't been all pro level. I think that's a pretty uncontroversial statement. We know with corners, they maybe don't take the physical punishment or near it that running backs do, but there's the same sort of precipitous drop-off maybe a little bit later on the aging curve. What he's done already, and he's going to be 32 for the entirety of this season, is defy that position's usual aging process a little bit. I certainly wouldn't be inclined to give him any level of significant money on a new contract because you don't know when the bottom's going to fall out. And maybe if you didn't have Minkah Fitzpatrick at free safety, and maybe if you and your staff thought, and Kevin Colbert thought, that Joe Hayden could make one of those transitions from corner to safety, loses a step, but he can play ball hawk, maybe then you'd consider something that would work for both sides. But like I just said, they have Minkah. He's the center fielder du jour, and Joe Hayden is not a guy who's going to step in as a strong safety and start laying the wood to people. That has never been his game. This just seems like a situation where he and his people are trying to secure a career finish in Pittsburgh, and I genuinely don't know if that's going to happen for them.
To your point, and here's something that I think about. Think about last season when Joe Hayden, at the very end of the regular season, contracts COVID, misses the last regular season game, misses the game in the playoffs. Remember what that position looked like without Joe Hayden there. That's one thing you keep in mind. But that's also something you keep in mind if you extend him for another 2 or 3 years. It's the same situation you're dealing with because you still have not as good depth. You have even less depth that you have behind him now than you did last year because there's no more Steven Nelson, there's no more Mike Hilton. So now you're looking further down the road with a group that has not really gotten much younger or better at corner. So now you leave yourself susceptible to that same possibility if, like you mentioned, the bottom falls out.
Well, they think Cameron Sutton can be their next corner one, CB1, I think as the kids say now, but He might have to move back inside because they can't find anybody that can apparently play the slot corner. We could talk all we want here about how they sort of reconstructed their roster in the offseason, but the fact remains they brought back Juju Smith-Schuster, who was blood and guts last year because nobody else wanted him on the open market for a big deal for what, $8 million? I think for that price, you could have had Hilton at the very least. You could have maybe figured out something that you could do with Steven Nelson that might have worked for both parties. They've willfully sacrificed depth at the cornerback position because they think they can replace it. And right now it seems like Joe Hayden is banking on the idea that they actually can't and that they're going to get desperate. I mean, this is what you just described there, where there's a lot of flux after Joe Hayden on the roster. That's a problem or a situation of the Steelers' own making. I don't know how you look at it any other way.
I can't disagree with you. I mean, it all pretty much adds up. And to your point, talking about the cornerback position, I always felt like Mike Hilton was a guy who was necessary. Even if the position itself maybe wasn't a necessity, you still needed maybe a guy like Mike Hilton, because if nothing else, besides Minka Fitzpatrick, what other guy was making plays that frequently or helping get takeaways in that defensive backfield? There was none. It was just Minka Fitzpatrick and Mike Hilton, and occasionally Joe Hayden. Now, granted, he was a Pro Bowler a couple years ago, but that's been a little bit of separation since now and then. And now you're getting to the point where 32 years old, you're starting to get long in the tooth as far as corners go, and the playmaking ability is starting to become a little bit more in question. What we'll do is we'll take a break here. When we come back, we're taking your phone calls, 412-575-2600 on the Borders and Borders hotline, plus taking your tweets at Josh Taylor HD. Chris is Chris Mueller, PGH. See you here in a few.